This is Counseling Insights with Gerry Lamothe. Gerry, how are you today?
I'm terrific, Cindy. Thank you for asking. I hope you're doing well.
We're doing well. Might as well be doing well. Why not?
That's good.
And what's going to be our topic today, Gerry?
Well, I'd like to address the issue of how we stay in the present. In counseling, that seems to be an issue that permeates almost everybody's life to some degree. How do we stick with the task at hand? How do I stay in the present? How do I not get trapped in the past or project into the future too far down the road? So how do I appreciate what is and stay in the present, stay on task, stay on today?
Because really you can't do anything about the past that already was. You can have regrets about it, but what good is that going to do?
Well, there are two things about the past that somehow block us or prevent us from enjoying or being or living in the present. And those two things, number one, are actual traumas or events or anniversaries, loved one's death, or something that's happened to us traumatically. Somebody's been violated in some way, tragically through a rape, a home invasion, or some tragedy like that. And that memory is kind of etched into our emotional life, so to speak. Whether we cognitively choose to not remember it or try to forget it, that can be dangerous. That's number one. So the second thing about that is anytime we bump into a similar activity, suppose, somebody's been violated and their house has been robbed or their car's been robbed or something or other. Well, the very next time they hear a story about somebody else being robbed, they read in the paper, they hear on the radio, they hear a story, their next door neighbor's robbed or whatever, they go back to relive that memory themselves, and the memory of that prevents us. So sometimes it's the actual trauma in a memory form that keeps us trapped as though we're reliving that experience again in the present, even just hearing about it. And of course, there's a term for that, and that's called post-traumatic event.
Post-traumatic event.
Right. Now, when people put the disorder to that, it's a repetitive thing. So a post-traumatic event is when I have something happen to me in the past, and then here it is, 10 years later, and there's an event that triggers me back into that memory. That's a post-traumatic event. Okay? A post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, as it's more widely known among the professional world at least, is when there is a pattern of that, and the event keeps happening over and over again. Every time I hear a story, now I'm living in the expectation as though I am being violated every time I hear a story about it.
Okay, that makes more sense.
So that's the disorder part. But we all have the events that happen to us, no matter, and the second part, the number two part, is that memory, you can't erase it. So who wants to erase it? Because the same thing happens with positive things. I have some wonderful memories that I don't want to get rid of. Mm-hmm. In fact, I want to relish them and celebrate them. But I don't want to be trapped into the negative ones. And so it's really the negative events, the emotional feelings, the way I felt and what I experienced and the pain, emotional or physical or psychological, that I went through in the initial event. Well, that's the past that really, even in a post-traumatic event or a post-traumatic disorder, the initial event isn't happening. It's a remembered negative emotion or a negative feeling. And that's where we don't want to be trapped into. And that's what robs us. Those negative memories that we get trapped into rob us from being in the present and actually creating or living or recognizing the wonderful parts of today. Rather, we're reliving the past experiences and emotions of the past. So how do we get rid of those?
Right, that's what I was going to ask.
How do we get out of that trap or those events? Well, there's not one specific way, but first of all, it's to recognize it. And there are many people out there who do get into patterns or the disorder part, or we slip into the patterns that maybe are borderline disorders, in that sense.
Right.
And so sometimes people do need to get professional help. And so for those people who repeatedly feel trapped into negative experiences of the past, well, this is where some professional counselor might be of help to them, and they might consider finding particular ways in which that counselor is going to help them unravel the complexities of how to get out of those past feelings. However, everybody doesn't need to go to counseling, and even when we do need to go to counseling, well, shoot, that doesn't mean we're not going to have moments in it. And so here's some of the practical things that all of us can do. Number one, we can focus on the present and have an attitude of awareness that the things I have today do not need to be robbed by the emotions of the past or the events of the past.
So you don't have to slip back into the bad time of the past. You can let some of it go. You're not going to let all of it go.
That's correct. And the word is, the operative word there is trapped.
Right. So that would be when you're overwhelmed by it.
That's correct. And a good example of that for certainly any of us that was around during the events or saw the events of 9/11, for example, as a nation, we nationally went through the traumas and the events that happened visually over and over and over again on television and other visual sites. And watching that over and over and over again actually produces in our brain a visual image that ultimately gets impacted. Even now, you could go up to people and ask them, well, where were you when you first heard of or you first saw the images, that happened on 9/11? And almost everybody can say, well, I was at such and such a place at such and such a time with such and such people, and that's when I saw it. And boy, our memory just gets locked in even to the details of how that happens. Well, that part is natural. And it isn't that we need to forget what we saw, however tragic it was. It's that we don't need to be stuck today in the same emotion of it. So even as I'm talking over the radio here and people are coming to mind with inside their own minds, inside their own brains, and seeing the visual images that I'm verbally talking about, don't stay stuck in that mental image that you see. It actually is etched into our brains. Once it's there, it gets embedded, etched into our brain. So the issue isn't getting rid of the memory. The issue is not staying trapped by it.
Or not to fixate on it. Because there's a normal way to think about it. I mean, you're not going to erase it from your brain, but you don't want to consume yourself with it either.
Well, and you're right on track there, Cindy. The word consumption is, fits right into all the ways in which sometimes people seek in their lives to avoid that memory. And avoiding the memory leads people into all kinds of addictive behaviors, ways in which they want to push away or deny that and try to eradicate that memory, which is an impossibility. So the more somebody tries to get rid of the memory, tries to avoid the memory in order to avoid the pain, while they're finding themselves into all kinds of addictive either behaviors, substance-wise or even behaviorally, workaholics, rageaholics, alcoholics, even religionaholics are basically doing all the same thing, trying to find a way to escape the memory and thinking that escaping the memory or erasing the memory of it is a way in which we're going to avoid the pain.
And that's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. It's a dead end going to that. It just produces more pain and keeps us out of the present circumstance. So to live in the present then needs a kind of a learning of new tools or new ways in which to stay focused with awareness on what the present is. And so I can remember an event that was negative and hurtful in the past, but I do not need to stay stuck in the emotion of that event.
Plus, think of all the time that you waste just being in that moment back then that's not positive. You can't go forward.
Well, that's correct, because the emotion that gets repeated is no longer based on the actual event. It's simply a repeat or a replay, much like watching the visual 911 activities going on over and over and over and over again. At some point, it's not the original. It's just a repeat performance in our brains of what that trauma and what that hurt was like.
Okay, Gerry, give your contact information for our viewers, and then we're going to go to a commercial break.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Anybody can reach me by my phone at 538-8297.
Okay, we'll be back with Gerry Lamothe, Pastoral Counsel.
Or International Trade Exchange is the largest barter company in the world with over 25,000 members offering goods and services. We're a marketing company that brings you new business in the way of trade with over 200 local members enjoying the benefits of iTex, like lawyers, doctors, plumbers, media, printing, and more.
Hi, this is Liz Bowler. Contact me and find out why barter through iTex has been smarter for over 30 years. 772-532-1881. Visit itex.com.
360verobeach.com is the online directory for local businesses looking to attract new customers and increase sales. Have a website? Feature it on 360verobeach.com and dramatically increase your traffic. Need a website? 360verobeach.com can be your web presence.
This is Liz Bowler. Remember 360 Vero Beach, the all-around best choice for your web presence.
360verobeach.com is a member of the iTex trading community. Your iTex dollars are welcome.
The Patio brings back early bird specials 4 to 5:30 Monday through Saturday. You can enjoy prime rib, chicken marsala, pork tenderloin, fresh fish, to name a few. And remember, you always get soup, salad, and a dessert with your meal. Lunch and dinner Monday through Saturday, happy hour 4:30 to 6:30 and 9:30 to close, makes the Patio Vero's original landmark restaurant. Don't forget live music Tuesday, Friday, and Saturday nights. The Patio, 1103 21st Street, Vero Beach.
We are back with Counseling Insights with Gerry Lamothe. And Gerry, this part of the segment, we're going to talk about the future. We don't want to get caught up in the past. You have to deal with the past, but now we're going to go into the future.
Correct. Being stuck in the past or being stuck in the future, they're both thefts of trying to find a way to live in the present, to enjoy the present, to relate to the present. Life isn't always happy in the present. We have a lot of issues that face us today. There are many people out there in their marriages and in their jobs and in their families who are dealing with real issues today. But to focus on those issues that are present today, rather than to be distracted by what happened last year or 10 years ago, robs us of the ability to find a healthy way to deal with the issues that are going on in our relationships, or in our jobs, or in our places of worship, or wherever we are in relationship with each other. We need to find a way to be present without being either stuck in the past, or, as I'd like to pursue at this point, how not to be stuck in the future as well. Because oftentimes when we're looking at the future, we're looking at something that's happened in the past, and we project that into tomorrow.
Right.
Oh my God, what happened yesterday is happening again today, and it's going to happen forevermore every other day forward. Mm-hmm. Right. And that kind of what's called a projection actually doesn't come from today. It comes from something that already happened in the past. I've always been an untrusting person, so there's nobody trustable in my life, and there never will be anybody that I can trust. Well, we don't always consciously think that way. But that's exactly what a projection does. It wants to deceive us. It wants to trick us that what's happened in the past will always be that way. Any parent out there, of an 8-year-old or 9-year-old knows exactly what I'm talking about. That's age-appropriate thinking for a 8-year-old or a 9-year-old child who thinks that what's going on today will always be like. If I'm bored at this moment, oh my gosh, I got to live bored the rest of my life, and if this is something that's not enjoyable, oh my gosh, the rest of my life is wrecked. Well, that's age appropriate in early childhood. But when we're stuck in that age development, doesn't matter what age we are as adults, we revert back to that kind of thinking, and we get stuck into a projection that unhappy moments are going to be with us, or tragic moments, whatever the case may be, are going to be with us into our future.
Right. And I've found through my own experiences, every time I've said always, that's not true.
You always do this. You never do that. You will never get it. As a counselor, one of the phrases that I hear all the time is, he doesn't get it.
Yeah.
She doesn't get it. And so when I hear that phrase now, I'm very careful to say, wait a minute, what is that it?
Right. And what
that
is
he or she doesn't get? What is that it? Let's talk about the it that they don't get. And not put the emphasis on never or always. They never get it. They will never get it. Well, what is the it that somehow or another you perceive, maybe in reality, maybe they don't get it, but what is the it? And once you begin to identify the problem, you see, then you've got at least a way to address it in the present, rather than to project it into the future as an always or never kind of thing. And so once you identify the problem, the emotion, the task at hand, then you are at least on track with figuring out how to pursue that today.
And then I found myself, when I've let myself go to address the issue, I don't think I say always and never that many times after that.
Yeah, and so one of the communication tools, this is just a tool, but it's really an effective tool to build good communication. And so in order to build better communication, it's always healthy to say, right now, I feel this. Right now, I think this. I don't always feel this, and I don't always think this. In fact, I may change my thought tomorrow. But right now, I'm thinking this, and right now, I'm feeling this. What a wonderful way to share.
So at least you leave yourself open
For change.
You're right. And what could happen in that second? You say maybe you can't trust someone, but 3 seconds into a conversation, someone new could walk in, and that's the person that you're going to trust.
Right. Or even if you're talking with somebody that you love, and you have one thought, and your loved one has another thought, and then you get into a conflict or a competition at that moment based on what you think the other person is trying to do. Are they trying to, convince me that their thought is right and mine's wrong? All that miscommunication is a projection of the future that actually comes out of a lived reality of the past, some kind of pattern in the past that we're projecting into the future. But when we use the proper tools of communication, we begin to say, right now, this is what I'm feeling. When you say this, I'm drawn to do that, and that comes from my past. I can even identify it then. I have an opportunity to identify, when you say this, I hear this from my past, even though I don't think you intend that. Or I feel blamed when you're talking with that tone of voice, even though you're not trying to blame me. So I can identify my feelings in the present, even when they come out of the past, without getting trapped into the past.
And how much better do you feel when it's honest? I mean, to tell the truth, to be honest, I have a good breath when I do that.
Yeah. Well, there's an honesty of communication that, particularly when it comes to parenting, and, every parent out there, I'm sure, can relate to this concept. There's none of us parents are perfect, but when we do something right, when we hit on a moment, maybe hit is the wrong word, but when we come upon a moment where with clarity I can say to myself, that was a good parenting moment I just did. Good job, Gerry. I reached, I said, and it was heard in the way in which I intended it, in a loving, caring kind of way. And I believe my son or my daughter at 14 years old understood that, received it in a caring way, rather than heard something I didn't intend. The word talk is like that. Come here, I want to talk to you. Wow, when my child hears that, they know that a lecture is about to come. So I don't use the word talk very much when I want to lecture. I say, come here, I have some advice I need to relay to you, or I have some expectations I need to, go over with you. But when I need to listen to them, I need to say, well, when you know what the expectation is, what were you thinking? What were you feeling? So genuine questions are another tool of communication. I don't need to lecture somebody until I know why they were doing or thinking or what they were doing or thinking, and that it comes from them and that they're sharing their thoughts and their feelings without, even 7-year-olds do projections, without them projecting that somehow I'm going to yell at them or somehow I'll be so angry at them that I'm not going to accept them into my life or rob them of the way in which I truly do love them. So children even do projections like that. We learn early in life how to hold on to the past and how to project into the future. Even 2-year-olds.
I was going to ask that. What age does it start? I mean, relatively any age.
At the age where you start to be able to talk in phrases. Okay? Don't point anymore.
Right.
You can use your words. Use your words. Don't point.
Yeah.
Wow. Learning a new language, learning to speak in phrases and with proper words and words that actually, my parents can understand. That happens around 2 years old.
Yeah, that's a great tool, too.
So then all of the ways in which I communicated before by crying or screaming or yelling or pointing, they don't work anymore. I get punished for them. And boy, that can be traumatic for some infants, when their hand is slapped or they're put down for ways in which people even laugh the way I communicated. And now I can't communicate that way. I've got to learn these words. You know?
Yeah, that's a new slant. I guess I never thought about it that way.
So that's how early it starts, and of course it's not full grown or necessarily a bad thing. Every child has to learn that process and learn that new language. But it can be truly traumatic, when even at that age, when a child isn't questioned, well, what are you trying to say? And so the tone of voice, the gentleness about it, and the genuine questioning that accompanies that, rather than the punitive, put-down, abrasive kinds of ways in which parents, including myself, by the way, have a tendency to do with children just learning a language.
Right. Well, we're all human.
We
all make mistakes.
Now, the only thing I want to add to that is teenagers have to learn a new language, too. Okay. It's a new emotional, psychosexual, social language, and it is truly, just like a 2-year-old, a new language to learn.
Well, every stage of when you grow up is, though, too. Teenage is, it's a difficult time.
Well, I got to tell you, even at my age, I'm learning a new language. Of course, it's all English. I know English, and we know the words. I can look up the words. Everybody knows the words. We can look them up in a dictionary. But when I recall the impatience that I had with my early children when they were still in diapers and toddlers and walking, saying to myself mostly, but once in a while I would actually say it to them, come on, hurry up, come on, I gotta go, I got adult things to do. Well, here I'm at the other end of life, in my 60s now, and I'm beginning to find that I'm saying that to myself. Come on, Gerry, hurry up, and my old creaky bones aren't moving as fast as they used to. I'm learning a new language of patience with myself. And so you're right there, Cindy. At every age of life, even though we're using the same English language for the most part, or whether we're French or Spanish or whatever, we have to reinterpret and reinvent that language into the present circumstance of our lives, staying not trapped in the past and not trapped into planning the events of the future so much that we don't enjoy the moment.
Now, you have to enjoy every moment of your life, because think of all the moments you lose if you're not going to enjoy that moment. And does that make sense?
It does, total. And the final thought that I have about that is, okay, so you're human. You're not going to enjoy the present all the time, and you will from time to time get trapped. Don't punish yourself. Find a way to peace.
Yeah, don't punish yourself. That's the lesson, the age-old lesson. Gerry, it was good to talk with you today, and I look forward to you next week.
Thanks, and peace to all the listeners out there.
Yes.